the biggest things in the world, you know.
How's your stomach feel?
Wow.
That's how it's going to be. So I do want to get started here because Jeremy is in the middle of his working day, as we are all as well, and so I want to make sure we have enough time. Just do a quick introduction. Jeremy won't go around the whole room, but I will let you know we have nurses, PTs, OTs, and speech therapists. We will probably have a social worker joining us here shortly too. So we've got everybody across the spectrum as far as disciplines that we have seeing patients. Jeremy owns a physical therapy practice right, literally walking distance across the parking lot over here, and he has, you can see his credentials here. I don't know if you guys are familiar with FAOMT or OCS, but OCS means he's a board-certified orthopedic clinical specialist. And then the FAOMT stands for Fellow of the American Academy of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapy.
Wow.
Which if you, yeah, right. Which in addition to making his business cards look great because he has these credentials, it's really a very difficult, and I don't know if prestigious is the right word, but it's certainly very difficult, very high level of specialized training that only a very small percentage of PTs in the country have. It's probably, if I was going to be seeking treatment for PT on an outpatient basis, that'd be the first credential I would look for, is if somebody had done some kind of manual therapy fellowship. So we have this great resource right next door. If we have patients who need physical therapy on an outpatient basis, please, by all means, refer to you. Take Medicare patients. So he's a great resource, and for somebody like this to kind of walk into our office and say, hey, I'd like to provide some kind of in-services for you guys is pretty serendipitous, considering especially if we're having a big push on improving pain here. So just want to give you the background here. So without further ado, I'll let Jeremy take over, and I'll be in and out behind chairs, I guess.
Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I'm a bit of a mumbler, so if I start to mumble, just throw something at me and I'll speak up a little bit better. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate y'all having me. I know it's kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart. The chronic pain patient. It's a little bit scary, or at least it was when I first got out. It was almost like a label that patients would get, so it can be a little intimidating, and it can be kind of an umbrella for lots of different types of patients. But in this talk, I wanted to kind of go over a little bit of pain science and kind of give you a perspective of how I go after it in the clinic and how we try to tackle it in the clinic. And if you have any questions, just shout them out, stop me. We'll keep it pretty informal. If I don't know the answer, I can just make something up for you. So we just want to see. Okay. So we'll go over a little bit of the background on pain science and just kind of how I go after it in the clinic. There can be a lot of information out there, and I find it can be hard sometimes to kind of bring it all together and put it to use in your practice. So there's the dreaded chronic pain patient. There's a good quote, crazy people have pain, but pain can also make you crazy. I liked it a lot, and I was looking around at who actually said it, and Gandhi didn't actually say it, but it just sounds a lot better if I tell you Gandhi. Did not say that.
Picture there, and then you did lie.
Right, but it was actually this guy, Dr. Droder. He's a dentist out in Maryland. Works with a lot of TMJ patients. They have a lot of pain also, but it's just that much better than Gandhi, I think. So, talking about pain science, some of the important people that are they're famous in the world of PTs or PT pain science. This Australian guy on the bottom here is David Butler. There's Adrian Lau. He's from South Africa. All these guys have really cool accents. Adrian Lau has an institute also, and then this other guy, he did a really cool TED Talk, and he wrote a book with David Butler, the first guy. His name is Lorimer Moseley. So the book they wrote was Explain Pain, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Some of you may have heard of that one. That's a big one. So the David Butler has the Neuro Orthopedic Institute. It's noigroup.com. And then Adrian Lau, his one is International Spine and Pain Institute. And if you guys want the slides, I can always email them to John and get them to you guys. But those are good resources if you're looking more in depth for pain information. So the Explain Pain book that David Butler and Lorimer Moseley wrote, I liked it a lot because they wrote 2 textbooks before this, and they're really good, but they were really complicated. And if you ask a lot of PTs, you say, man, do you like those books? They say, yeah, they were great. You say, how far did you get into them? Like the first chapter, because there was just so much information and so thick. But then they came out with Explain Pain, which was great because it put in a lot of great information, but made it a lot more palatable. And they would use stories and things so that I could understand it and that I could explain it to my patients also, which was a lot more useful. And so one of the big things they talk about in that book is an upregulation of the central nervous system. So I want to dive into that just a little bit because our chronic pain patients are going to have an upregulation of the central nervous system. So this is Ronda Rousey. I think this was her fight with Holly Holmes when she got knocked out. So we're going to use this as an example of pain. So if we use that getting hit in the face, that will send a signal to your brain. Your brain will process that information and say, okay, there's an alarm that goes off. This should cause pain, and pay attention to this. So we have that, and that's just a normal everyday, somebody hits you in the face, maybe you slip and fall on the ice, you have an input, goes into the brain gives you that output, that painful sensation. So now if we take a more extreme version of this, the guy, Lorimer Moseley, who wrote, one of the guys that wrote Explain Pain, he does a TED Talk on this, and he does it a lot better than me because he's got his cool Australian accent. But he tells a story about him walking around in Australia, down in the bush, and it's an extreme example of the upregulation of the central nervous system. So what happens is he's walking, and all of a sudden he feels a little scratch on the outside part of his ankle. And then so what happens is he says, okay, I kept walking, no big deal. What happens, he walked you through the whole process of a little scratch on the outside of his ankle, the nerves in his leg, notice the input. It goes up through his leg, through his spinal cord, into his brain, and his brain kind of says, okay, what was that? Okay, it was just a little scratch on the outside of our leg, no big deal, keep walking. So he says the next thing that happens is he wakes up, he's in the hospital, his leg is all swollen, he had been bitten by some killer Australian brown snake, one of the many poisonous snakes they have in Australia, I guess. So he almost dies. So he says, okay, in the TED Talk, everybody claps for him because he survives this like crazy snake bite. And so he says, all right, fast forward 2 years later, what happens? He's out in the bush, same thing. He's walking around. No problem at all. He gets this intense pain in the outside part of his leg. It drops him like a ton of bricks. He's on the ground. He's yelling. He's screaming. He's never had such intense pain before. And he says, his friend comes up. He says, oh my God, what happened? He says, well, I can't believe I got bit by a snake again. So his friend looks. There's no snake. There's no snake bite. There's a little stick and a scratch on the outside part of his leg. So he says, okay, what happened there? So he walks you through the whole process again. And he says, all right, so I got the input from the stick. The nerves in my leg kind of sends information through my spinal cord up to my brain. My brain says, wait a minute, what's this? And because he was exposed to it in the past, so we know exactly what this is. This type of input almost killed us 2 years ago, so pay attention to it. So then it sends out that very strong pain signal that drops them like a ton of bricks. So our patients are going through a very similar thing with whether it's back pain, neck pain, whatever pain they're experiencing. And it's not to say that it's in their head, because whatever pain they're experiencing, they're feeling that pain. But their central nervous system, especially if it's been in a long period of time, they've been hurting for a long period, they're going to get very sensitive to it, and they're going to be very upregulated, very tightly wound, just very sensitive to that pain. So this is just an extreme example of that upregulated central nervous system. And one of the things we want to do is downregulate that central nervous system. So that whole snake story to talk about downregulating the central nervous system and how we want to do it. So in the past, if you have, say I was walking in the forest, and I like my weird pictures here. So say I was walking in the forest and I get cornered by a bear. In the past, I would either, you've heard of the fight or flight instinct, I would either fight that bear or I'd run away. Probably run away from the bear, but I would burn that energy off. But nowadays, maybe I have pain, maybe I have fear, maybe I have anxiety, stress, and I just wake up in the morning and I know I have a long day of 6 home health patients that I need to go and see, and I'm stressed out from it. So now I'm just starting to slowly get more and more upregulated. So what happens then is you don't have that outlet to burn off the energy. So that's where some of these other things can come into play. So some of the tools that I'll use to downregulate the central nervous system. Now, you don't even have to necessarily be a PT for all of them either, because I know we've got some other folks in the room. So pain education is a big one. We want to limit stress on the body, getting the patient into a better posture, and addressing muscle imbalances. So that could be something as easy as if they're going to be in a chair for a long time, they spend a lot of time in a recliner or something like that, getting them positioned better in that. It can be doing a couple goofy PT exercises to correct muscle imbalances and get them into a better posture. You can do manual intervention, and what I mean by that is hands-on techniques. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to crack anybody's neck or pop a back or anything like that. It can be pretty basic stuff. There's also a thing called the Associative awareness technique. It was actually 2 PTs in Colorado that came up with this, Scott Musgrave and Ernie Quinslick. And they've got a website too, but if you just Google Associative awareness technique, they've got some cool stuff on that, and I'll show you that. We'll go through that. And then just some corrective exercises. So the pain education part, you can tell them stories about like the Lorimer Moseley story, and let them know that the pain they're feeling is, assuming it's normal, you know, and they're checked out, and it's not anything that we're concerned that needs to be checked out further. But let them know that it's, you know, it's normal. It's a normal reaction for them to become sensitized to this thing and to react the way that they're reacting to it. You can tell them about the snake bite story. You can tell them about how the brain processes information, how pain is an output of the brain and not an input of the brain. It's your brain interpreting that information that it gets. Totally normal though. There is one more book that Lorimer Moseley has. I like it a lot. It's called Painful Yarns. I think it's like $20 on Amazon. And he uses stories to talk to people about pain and helping them understand the biology of pain and kind of what's going on. So he's got a lot of cool stuff with that. And it's not like it's actually a pretty good read. It's pretty short. Okay, so I can't talk about pain without putting in something on the homunculus. So it's a part of our brain, and it's where we have our brain map. And so in most people, we're going to have, I don't know if you can see too well. In my next picture, you might be able to see a little better. But over on the right side there, you can see kind of like a big hand on the top. People, and like a big set of lips on kind of the bottom left one there. And what it is we're just going to be more predisposed to have more nerves in certain parts of our body, and our brain will pay more attention to those parts. So like for our back, it's going to be pretty small. Like if we put this representation into a person, it would look like that. So we've got we're paying lots of attention to everything that's around our mouth, our tongue, our hands, our fingertips. That's what it would look like. And what happens with the homunculus is when somebody's in pain, you get what they call a smudging of that homunculus. So it can change. Our body map in our brain will smudge or change a little bit. So if we're in pain a long time, now instead of our hands being as big as they are, maybe our right shoulder gets a little bit bigger, or that painful site in our back gets a little bit bigger, and it can start to change. So they've seen this on MRI. So now we've got a smudged homunculus. It's a little scary. So in my head I'm thinking like, great, so now our brain's broken. That can't be good. But the good thing is, just the same way it can be smudged and kind of go south, go sideways, we can intervene to unsmudge it. So this is where something like manual therapy can help, and it can refresh or kind of sharpen that smudged homunculus. You don't have to go and crack any backs necessarily, or manipulate necks or anything like that. I think something as simple as, and assuming, however, it may be different depending on what you can fit into your treatment, but assuming it's appropriate, a lot of times just general soft tissue mobilization, it can work. It can do wonders for the person, even if you give them a little bit of hands-on intervention and now you can show them, okay, their knee can bend a little bit better, their back doesn't hurt as bad. In addition to unsmudging that homunculus, it also gives them hope and lets people know that, okay, it's okay for, somebody can actually touch my back there and it's not sending me through the roof. So that's the biggest part I want to talk about, the hands-on, so it won't be too in-depth on hands-on. So the next part, the associative awareness technique. Moving right along to what the 2 PTs in Colorado started with. So they've got a book. I keep talking about books here. I swear I don't get reimbursed by any of these guys, but they've got one. It's called Reflex Exercise. And I think that one's like around $10. But it'll walk you through what we're going to talk about here. And it's kind of the very beginning of the associative awareness technique. And because it's going to be on YouTube, I should also say that I would probably make these guys very upset if I were to call this a relaxation technique or just a nice way to meditate, like a quick and dirty meditation. That's how I think of it, but they would probably not want you to think of it as relaxation technique or meditation. But I think it kind of works the same way. And it's not, I wouldn't think of this as what I'll show you here as necessarily a cure-all, but just part of treatment. So it can go with your exercise and your functional activity with everything else that you're already doing here. Okay, so we can do this in any position, and at this point I'd probably put some of you to sleep, so you can do it in your chair if you want, but I'll do it with you. So you can do it sitting, standing, laying down, but if you want to do it in your chair, that works perfect. So I'm going to have you gently curl your toes. You don't have to go so hard where it like cramps the arches of your feet or anything, but you're going to gently curl your toes. You're going to have your palms open and out to your side. And if you can't do one of these things, it's okay. You don't have to do every single step. But if you do it all together, it usually works out the best. You're going to gently bite your tongue, and that helps some of the muscles in the face and neck relax. And then you're going to look towards your dominant side, assuming it's comfortable. So you're just going to slightly look towards your right side. And then the fun wonky part is if you imagine a light in your chest when you inhale, and then as you exhale, you just imagine all the tension leaving your body. And so you can do it eyes open, eyes closed. But I usually will have people do this at first. You can be laying down, you can be in a recliner, and then you do about 5 breaths just like that. And you just have the person breathe in, imagine the light going on in their chest, and breathe out, tension leaving their body. And what can happen sometimes is this will help to downregulate that central nervous system. And it's just another tool that you can use. You don't have to touch the person. It can be quick and dirty. You can give it to them for homework. But it's one that I like to use. The frequency on it is where some people will get hung up a little bit. So they recommend doing it 3 to 4 times an hour in the beginning, which most of the time people are like, you're crazy, I'm not going to do it. If I get them to do it a little bit, it's okay. And I tell them, if you can just have a couple reminders throughout your day to sneak it in there, you just sprinkle it in. You can do it in any position. You don't have to make it a big formal thing for you to go lay down in bed to do it, but you can do it in any position at all. So this is one of the ones that I like to throw at people, in addition to some other stuff. But yeah, it's hands off. You can do it at home. It's a nice adjunct to the homework. And I think of it as a quick and dirty version of meditation and relaxation. Although if Scott Musgrave and Ernie were here, they'd probably kick me in the face. Okay, so corrective exercises. I want to talk a little bit about corrective exercises. And what I mean when I talk about corrective exercises is I think of it as addressing muscle imbalances. So a lot of times people, with the amount of time we spend, even in Colorado, we're people sitting at a job, at a desk, sedentary lifestyles, especially if they're homebound and receiving home health care. I'm guessing they're probably not out hiking very much or anything like that. So chances are, what's the catchy phrase they have now is sitting is the new smoking. So my guess is if you have somebody that's sitting a lot, they're going to have some muscle imbalances. So if we can go after these, this can limit stress on the body and downregulate the central nervous system, upregulate the central nervous system as well. So I'm a big PT nerd, and one of the groups that I like a lot out there that has some good exercises is Postural Restoration Institute. They don't do much in the way of hands-on. They have a couple hands-on techniques, but they do a really nice job of looking at the patient as a whole and then zeroing in on whatever problems they might have. And they do a nice job with their exercise selection and thought process. So I like them a bunch. They've got the best corrective exercises I found out there. And their thinking is that the body is asymmetrical, and a lot of these muscle imbalances are caused by asymmetries. So we'll talk about that just a little bit. So some of the common problems that you'll see with your patients, a lot of your patients, and the stuff that I'll see a lot in the clinic, we'll see asymmetrical pelvises. So that's if the person was facing us, and on their left, so it would be our right, their left, that innominate bone is going to be tipped forward and rotated just a bit. So that's a normal one we'll see. We'll see asymmetrical ribs. When people bend forward, you might see a rib hump, especially on that right side. In person, this is kind of an extreme example of a rib flare from the front, but it looks like this guy is kind of sucking in his stomach. Well, what's actually happening is he's just laying there at rest, and the left side of his rib cage is going to be really flared out. The right side is going to be really turned in. Some other stuff we'll see, asymmetries of the head, neck, and face. We can see jaw deviations, temporal bone slightly turned in, eye height and the cant of the jaw will be a little bit off. We'll see People with, where they're kind of externally rotated, they'll be standing toed out. We'll see people with valgus at the knee kind of collapsing in when they go to do a squat, if they go to pick something up. And so usually when we see